Alright guys, I'm dead excited because this week I had a major breakthrough whilst I was experimenting cutting some wood on my new Mark II twist jig. What that breakthrough meant was, for the first time, I believed it might be possible to make this thing that I've been trying to make for the last 2 months. But before I carry on, I want to show you what it is that I want to make and some of the problems I've been up against over these last few months. Let me explain. A few months ago, I made this. It's the Impossible Twist, and it's made out of a solid piece of ash. And once I'd finished making this, I was really happy how it turned out. But I started thinking to myself, what could I do to take this to the next level? And then I had an idea. Why not just make it out of 2 types of wood? Dark wood and a light wood. And how am I going to do that? It seemed pretty easy at the time. 6 triangles, 3 of each colour. Cut them at 60 degrees. Join them together to form a hexagon. Turn it into a circle and then cut the grooves along each piece of wood. But it doesn't work like that. If I run these through my twist jig, it's going to cut from one colour into the next, which might look nice, but it's not what I'm trying to do. Somehow, I have to make a piece that's cut at 60 degrees, which starts in this position and finishes in this position. And the 60 degrees has to follow the twist all the way from the front all the way to the back. And that's when I genuinely believed that this piece was going to be impossible to make. I've made a couple of modifications to this jig. I've fitted a perspex lid so I can attach my vacuum cleaner, and that will stop most of the dust and bits of sawdust flying out. And the other thing I've done is I've fitted a bolt onto my disc on the end, so now I can spin the piece with my drill. So now I can put any shape I want in here and I can make it round, dead easy. So now that this piece is all rounded off, I can set up my router and start cutting the individual spirals. Well guys, it's the day after. I stopped filming yesterday because I had a problem. The router bit came loose. Now I thought, well, I probably just haven't tightened it up enough, it's my fault. So I tightened it up, started cutting again, it came loose again. So the second time it happened, I thought obviously there's some sort of problem. So I stripped everything down, checked it, put it all back together, it seemed okay. Started cutting again, it came loose again. So obviously something's not right. Everything's tight. There's a problem somewhere. So what I did is I started to cut some straight pieces. Now when I cut the straight pieces, everything's perfect. It's only when I start cutting the twists. So from that, I assume, maybe I'm wrong, but I assume that if this is your outer bit, and because I'm twisting the wood through, it's putting pressure on the top and bottom on the opposite sides, and that's causing it to work loose because it's causing it to vibrate. Just seems a coincidence that it cuts in a straight line okay. Now it wasn't just one cutter, I've got 3 identical cutters, and I thought maybe that the shaft, the shank, has been machined slightly undersized, and when I tighten up it's not tightening up enough. But it happens with all of them. So from that I can only assume it's because I'm putting pressure on the top on one side and on the bottom on the other side it's working loose. So that said, what I'm doing now is every few cuts I'm making sure that I reseat and retighten the cutter, and hopefully that'll solve my problem and I'll be able to continue cutting. But I haven't finished this yet. I'm just hoping that there isn't too much damage on this piece, but I won't know until I've totally finished. So there we go, let's get on with it. Well, I managed to keep it tight enough to stop it coming loose, and I've finished off the slots. So now what I've got to do is I've got to take this piece out of here and somehow find a way to release each of the pieces from the big block, and then I can get on with cutting the dark wood. So let's see how that turns out. I'm not sure you can see this, but I think that the shadow shows the way that the cutter had to move in order to cut this slot. I've cut the new piece of wood to the same radius as this. The piece is not as big as this, it was just over halfway, which if you look at this you think, oh that's easy, 3 pieces, but because of the twist this piece finishes here. So I need, well, this piece it's right on the limit. If I get it right I might just be able to make these 3 pieces. If I get it wrong, the piece is dead and it's game over for at least a couple of weeks until I can order some new wood. So I really hope I get it right. Let's get making. I started this first cut as far over this side as I could. It took a bit of setting on my jig, but I got it right. Which means I've got the first piece, which is great. The second piece, great, and then the third piece comes round and I can't believe it. It just finishes with 2 millimeters to spare. That is really good. I wasn't sure if I was going to do it, but that is fantastic. I'm really pleased with that. Now I just have to hope that I can continue the cuts without the cutter coming loose and without having any more errors, because well, there's no room for error on this. I need 3 pieces and I can only make 1, 2, 3 pieces. So let's see if I can finish it and get it right. Well, I've managed to make my 3 pieces. I've cut the slots as deep as I possibly can without touching this metal on the end. So now what I have to do is remove this piece out of the jig, remove it from the jig, and then I'm stuck with the task of cutting each individual piece without damaging the sides. I don't know how I'm going to do that, but let's start with getting this out the jig. Well, I've finally got 3 pieces that fit together. Absolutely brilliant. And not only that, but they're interchangeable. And that means that the sides are at equal angles, which is what I'm aiming for. So now what I have to do is I've got to cut the white pieces out and just hope them are interchangeable with these pieces. Well, I've managed to get the first piece of ash out of the round bar. So now I just have to see if it fits in between the other pieces. Let's have a look. Here we go. Ooh, oh, thank goodness for that. Wow, excellent. Oh, that's brilliant. Oh, that is brilliant. That is something I never thought I'd see a couple of days ago or a couple of weeks ago. Oh, that's superb. What about the other piece? Brilliant. Interchangeable. Both sides. Oh, that is superb. Wow. Oh, well, fantastic. I'm really pleased with that. But I'm calling it quits for today because I've had enough. It's beer o'clock. Oh, you can see what happens in a minute, but for me that's tomorrow. Oh, I'm dropping things now. I'm going to have a beer. Catch you in a minute, guys. Well, guys, that's all the hard work finished. All the calculations have been done. All the experiments have been tested. And yesterday I finished cutting the final piece. So all that's left now is to glue them together, and then tomorrow I can put it back into my twist jig for one final time in order to make this into the dual twist that I set out to achieve. Let's get it finished. So now I've just got to let the glue go off, and then I can carry on with it tomorrow, providing everything's okay. Well, it's the day after. Let's take as much of this tape off as we can. Oh, that's amazing. I thought a lot of that tape would have been stuck to the glue. None of it's all come off. Brilliant. Well, I've filled the ends, ready for drilling the holes so that it can go back in the jig. And then I've got to set everything up ready for cutting. It's going to take a bit of time to do that, so you guys can catch me in a minute. So now I'm just going to run it through the saw a couple of times to clean up the surface, and then I'm going to set up the slide rail so I can finish off the cuts. I've noticed a few air bubbles in the glue where I didn't get enough pressure squeezing it together. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to fill these with super glue, and then I've sanded the surface of the wood and taken some of the powder, and I'm going to drop that into the super glue, and then let's just get that on there. There we go. And then pack that, push it down into the hole, wait for a few seconds, let it go hard, and then sand it smooth. Well guys, this is it. It's make it or break it time. I've managed to set everything up, took me about 20 minutes. And now I'm about 3/4 of an hour away from the final result. But you guys are about 30 seconds away. So stay with it and then you can see what it looks like. Well, providing I don't mess it up. Let's get making. Before, when I filled these little gaps, it didn't quite work out as well as it should. So I've made some strips and I'm going to glue the strips on and I'm going to sand them down. I shouldn't be bothering really because it's nice enough as it is, but I don't know, I just want it to be absolutely right. So that's what I'm going to do. Well, there it is. The caps are all fitted. I've rounded them all off, sanded them all up. So all that's left to do now is to give it a nice coat of wax just to finish it off. Well guys, I did it. I've actually achieved what I set out to make, and that is this dual spiral. I'm really pleased with how it turned out, but it's not been easy. Started off, I made this and it all went wrong, but I learned from my mistakes. I made myself a new jig and I managed to make this, which I'm really pleased with, and I cut it completely with everything on my table saw. Well pleased. And that's when I decided to make this spiral, but to do that I needed to make 6 of these pieces which curve through 60 degrees, and they've got a 60-degree V which follows the curve. And I tried and tried, but I just could not do that on my table saw. And that's when I had my major breakthrough, because I got this spiral and I put it in the same jig and I run it through my router, and I ended up with a slot right down the centre of the groove. And that's when I realised I'm going to be able to make this now, because using a very thin router bit I was able to cut both sides of this V and twist it at the same time. And even that wasn't easy because the bit kept coming loose, and I ended up digging big holes into the test piece. Wobbly bits, shaky bits, just wasn't working. But in the end, managed to do it, and I'm really pleased with the result. The best thing is, now that I've finished, I can move on to something else. something that takes a lot less thinking than what this took. That melted my brain for 2 months. So, if you don't want to miss what I'm doing next time, subscribe to my channel. Thanks for watching, guys. I really appreciate it. Catch you next time.